Welcome to the Screener College Basketball Podcast with your hosts, Mike Randall and Gus Kearns.
Welcome in, listeners, to the Screener College Basketball Podcast, where we're always talking everything college hoops, Sweet 16 style these days. You can be anywhere else on the dial, but you chose to be here with us, Mike and Gus, and we appreciate that. Little shout out to Spreaker. Thanks for getting us in your earbuds, your speakers, or however you're consuming us. And shout out to Bell Jar, our intro and outro music forever. All episodes of the Screener College Basketball Podcast. Mike, how's everything going on your end? Do you want to talk some Sweet 16 for the listeners out there?
It's amazing. I'm so excited. And again, the jar is always half full with me.
Has to
right?
be.
It has to be. And same with you, brother. So I understand that we didn't have the massive upsets, and we almost had Duke, Aubrey Dawkins. That tip would haunt me forever. Losing to UCF, or as Mike Francesa would say, CFU. Okay. However,
hilarious.
I think we're set up for some of the best Sweet 16 matchups that we've had in quite some time.
I think it's going to be really interesting. We always root for that upset in the early round games to kind of like say, like, I sounded really smart with this one team. But then when push comes to shove and you put your chips in the middle of the table, you know who you kind of want to see. And so we're just going to get that right here, minus the upsets that, you know, we kind of look forward to or attach to or have some sort of emotional attachment to early on in the tournament, where you can, like, you know, elbow your buddy and be like, oh yeah, do you remember the anteaters? Like, yeah, you can still do that, just not at the same frequency that you have in tournaments past. And by the way, that's okay. It's not the end of the world. Again, kudos to the selection committee for maybe getting some of the seeds right. Kudos to the selection committee for getting the right teams in the first place. And then, you know, kudos to the coaching staffs for holding their seed lines and making sure that they found their way through and navigated through that bracket. So it's not all bad. It's not all bad. So what we thought we'd do on the Screener College Basketball Podcast for you guys is we'll just go, we'll do a little countdown for you. We're going to do 4, 3, 2, 1. We're going to give you 4, our updated, like, final 4, now that maybe some of our teams may or may not be existing in the bracket. We'll give you 3 players to look forward to that we think might impact the games on Thursday and Friday. We'll give you 2 coaches that we think are interesting, might have something on the line, or might pull a rabbit out of their hat. And then we're going to give you 1 team that we think we want to pay attention to, whether it be we think this team might cover, we think this team might play well, we think this team might bonk. So, Mike, you ready to play a little 4, 3, 2, 1 for the listeners out there?
Beautiful. 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's do it.
All right. So, let's just go over our updated Final 4, right? We made our picks and everybody makes their prognostications previously, and I think right off the bat, I think we need to bring up Ty Outlaw, because one of the teams that I picked in the East to go to the Final Four is Virginia Tech, and he has run into some legal troubles out on the West Coast by getting arrested for some maybe paraphernalia type situation. So his inclusion in this matchup against Duke is kind of in flux right now. Of course, they're gathering their research and they'll make a decision on it. That seems kind of interesting and really impactful, especially because he hit that big 3 in the game against Liberty. So you want to see, like, I don't know, are they going to pull the plug on him and play it safe, or are they going to ride it out because they feel like they have a chance here against you? I think it's kind of interesting. So just to go with my final, I picked Virginia Tech. I guess I'll stay there, and of course that's Outlaw dependent. I'm going to stay with the Zags down in the West. I'm holding true there. I'm going to change my tune. I'm going right with you. I mean, you mentioned this on the Action Network podcast. I went Kentucky, pre-tournament. I'm flipping back to UNC. And then I think up top, I'm with you on the Tony Bennett redemption tour. I think they're going to find their way through this bracket in some fashion. So, Mike, I'm going to stick with Virginia Tech, even though there's some static and some outside activity that's going to influence that game. Zags, UNC, and UVA. Where are you at with your updated newbie Final 4 now that we're in the Sweet 16?
Yeah, I talked about this on the Favorites podcast on the Action Network. I did a power rankings, and my power rankings that I also put on Twitter. You can follow me at Randall Rant, the podcast at SDS Podcast, and Gus at CKearns12. I put them out, Gus, based on who I think is going to make the Final 4. This Outlaw news is a disaster for Virginia Tech. They're already shorthanded. Right? They were supposed to have Chris Clark, right? And they didn't. Buzz Williams is tremendous. This is a disaster. They're a Jenga puzzle. They're not as good as Duke. Duke survived a big scare. I just put my pick into the Action Network app before we started based on the Outlaw news, and I gave the 7.5. I would have liked Virginia Tech with the 7.5 ahead of time.
Right.
I don't think Virginia Tech, and I said this before this game a couple days ago, I don't think they're making the Final Four. I don't. In fact, I don't think Michigan State is either, or LSU. Here's my rationale. You have the best coach in the history of the game. I know John Wooden, but I think I can make a decent argument it's Coach K. You have him with the National Player of the Year, Zion Williamson. You're playing a Virginia Tech team that is shorthanded, that they're familiar with also. Now listen, if Outlaw didn't go out, I would have liked the 7.5 with Virginia Tech, 100%. I don't think he's playing. A marijuana arrest would be very tough for Buzz Williams to play him. It's a distraction they don't need. Michigan State, Tom Izzo's legendary. They don't have Joshua Langford. If he makes the Final Four without Josh Langford, it's the best coaching job he's ever done. I just think at some point that catches up with them, and LSU without Will Wade is not beating Tom Izzo and potentially Mike Krzyzewski back to back. That's not happening. So I think Duke is making it in the East. In the West, I mentioned this. I love Texas Tech right now. I think they're playing at such a high level. Culver is actually engaged. If he goes back to flaking out Culver, then any of these other teams can make a move. I love Chris Beard. I love their defense. They're shooting the three well. They got three guys, I think, over 37%. So I like Texas Tech. Down screen, back screen, redemption tour for Tony. Slow it down. Yes, I like Virginia. I like them against Oregon. We'll get into that later. And then Purdue, Tennessee, both of which I think are flawed. And I'm with UNC. I think they're the national title team. You called this from the very beginning of the year. You were all over Kobe White before Kobe White had 5 million people on the bus, including myself. You called it. You were right. This team is loaded. They are balanced. They have coaching. They have depth. They have Nassir Little. They have Kobe White. They have Cam Johnson. They have Luke May. I'm done. North Carolina.
It seems like the mess in the East with all those teams that have whatever compromised situation that they are dealing with, whether it be on the coaching front with LSU, whether it be on the roster front with Virginia Tech, or whether it be just on the injury front with Michigan State. It's hard to get away from Duke, isn't it? It's just really hard. Like every single bracket that I've looked at, whether it be in your office pool or whatnot, has Duke, and rightly so, going to the Final Four. So, yeah, we're going to differ on that. I'm going to hold true with Virginia Tech and hope that Buzz finds a way. But, I mean, if we're looking at this realistically, of course, like you have the player of the year, you have a great coach, you have a great supporting cast, you have guys that are like invested and play hard for each other at Duke. Yeah, that makes sense.
If we didn't have the Outlaw news, I'd be with you. I think that's a big, big difference. We're not talking about that guy Cueto who was the trainer for the Celtics in the 80s who never played. We're talking about a guy on a bench that doesn't play a lot of guys. It's a big deal. But who knows? Maybe you can keep it close. Absolutely.
Yeah, and then of course you don't know how Justin Robinson is going to react to playing back-to-back games off the bench. Obviously, they're going to need some more from him if their Outlaw's not involved. I know they don't play the same position, but those minutes have to go somewhere. I'm assuming some of them will lean towards Robinson. So, there's just too many unknowns there. There's too many variables for somebody to solve, even for a great coach like Coach Williams. Mike, how about 3 players? Now that we've gone over our updated Final Four, 3 players that you think might have some sort of influence on the game, explode in our face like a Brandon Clark, like a Carson Edwards. I'm trying to think like a Windler from Belmont, like any of those types of performances. I'll go first with my 3. I'm going to cheat a little bit and go 2 from one team here. I think Oregon's interesting. I think Oregon's interesting for a couple of different reasons. First reason, Kenny Wooten. He's averaged 4.7 blocks per game over his last 4 games. So as much as Virginia's going to slow it down
by the way, partner, when we were younger and we used to watch the draft and talk college basketball together, we can inform the listeners that I used to just walk around randomly blocking things, hitting stop signs when we went to lunch. Remember that? Hitting the wall, and I would yell Weber. Okay, so this is when Chris Weber was just blocking everything. I would yell Weber. You and the other major people in our group know I did this. I'd hit the wall. I'd yell Weber in the middle of a supermarket if we were grabbing something. If we were kids today, I'd yell Wooten.
You would yell Wooten?
I would yell Wooten, yes.
And then hit the stop sign, and the stop sign would reverberate.
We'd be walking back from lunch in 9th grade, and I'd yell Wooten. That's what I do, yes.
So he is, and if Virginia's going to slow this down, and they're going to play it at their pace, guess what? Some of those possessions are going to get erased by Wooten. So they're already going to be working at a disadvantage. And then, coupled with that, we talked about Pritchard a little bit. Pritchard's averaging 19 plus points per game over his last 5 games. He's playing like one of the best guards in the country. He's obviously playing like one of the best guards in the tournament. So they have a couple of things to solve there. I think the Pritchard, Jerome /Guy I'm sure they'll throw Clark on him a little bit too. Matchup is going to be really interesting. So if he continues to play at that high level and Wooten is going to limit a couple of their possessions on the defensive end, I think that game gets really saucy and kind of interesting. Second player to pay attention to, I think, is Perk. Here's what I'm going to say about Perk. The key number for him is the turnovers. If we look at his turnover numbers against St. Mary's in the loss in the conference tournament, the number is 5. It's 5 turnovers. If we look at the UNC game, the number is 6 turnovers. If we go back and look at the Tennessee game, the turnover number isn't there, but he went 0 for 6 and put up a donut. So what I'm saying here is, in those 3 losses, and there are only 3 losses, Perk played pretty terrible. He played very out of character. He played like a point guard that is not going to win you a big game. All we're saying here is if he's efficient and average, not blow up and go for 20. If he scores his 10 points, turns the ball over 2.5 times, makes a 3, has like one of those tricky, creative, no-look passes, then we're looking at a Gonzaga win. However, the other game that stands out here is the Illinois game in Hawaii. If you go, hit the rewind button, majorly, he had 7 turnovers in that game. And if you remember, that game was way closer than it should have been. It was 84-76. So that's another thing to pay attention to here. So my second player that I think is really important in how this weekend is going to unfold and how Thursday and Friday will unfold into the weekend is Perk. I'm not saying he's going to blow up and go bananas and have a crazy game and be a difference maker like he did in the first half of the championship game 2 years ago. But what I am saying is if he just does his thing, plays efficient, gets the ball to the right places, Zags will be fine. And then my third player is Xavier Simpson. He's averaging 10 assists a game over his last 5. And my question here is, will he be able to remain at the front of the offense against this Texas Tech defense, and whether it be Mooney or Culver or whoever else? Will his running hook find some too much traffic with all that length and defensive prowess that Texas Tech's hold, including Owens in the middle? Or will he be a tick away from a triple-double like he was against Florida? So I think depending on where you are with your Xavier Simpson love and hate or vibe, I think Michigan is interesting as well. I think everybody's going to point to the Charles Matthew Culver matchup, which is going to be awesome. You kind of want to see which one of those guys is going to ball out the most or at least limit the other one. But I think Simpson is the key guy there. If he's going to flirt with a triple-double again and mess around, I think Michigan will be all right. But if he's going to be limited by Texas Tech length on the defensive end, I think we're looking at the team that you called for the Final Four in your power rankings to make a little run here. So, Mike, break down a couple players first. What are you looking at? What 3 players do you think might have potential impact that could influence a game one way or the other?
Yeah, we don't have any of the same players, which is fantastic. We did not.
Okay, good.
I'm going to pick guys who I think are critical. They are the turning point. They are that absolute fulcrum of whether their team is going to advance or not. Let's start with the Zags. I'm going to go with Killian Tilly.
Ooh.
All of the Gonzaga faithful, yourself included, have a massive disagreement with me on Killian Tilly's ability and his projection in the pros. Well,
yes.
You know what, guys? Shut me up. Shut me up in this game. You're playing a Florida State team that waxed you last year 75-60. You had Tilly, who was injured before the game, and last year he was an issue. 12.9 points. 47.9% from 3-point range. That's on 94 threes. That's a good amount of threes. He had 5.9 rebounds, 1.7 assists, 1 block, and basically 1 steal. That is a fair point that a 6'10 guy being ruled out for a game against a big Florida State team last year would have made a difference. Fair point. However, what we've seen this year is he's only played 13 games. It's been an injury-filled year. His numbers are his numbers. 6.7 points. He's still shooting 42.9% from 3-point range. That's only on 28 attempts. He's had 4 rebounds, 1.6 assists. He is going to have to bring it in this game. Brandon Clark is 6'9". I know that we think Brandon Clark now, because he did a windmill dunk on the break, is the second coming of Shaq. That's what everybody's saying. He's 6'9". He's not going to dominate against Florida State, particularly coming off a 36-point game. But Killian Tilly will not be planned for. He can be the X factor. He has done Zippo this year. Don't tell me about the 17 points against Fairleigh Dickinson. Don't tell me about that. He's done Zippo. Baylor, 2 points. St. Mary's, West Coast Conference Tournament Final, 5 points, 12 minutes. It's your time. You're healthy. I want to see it, Killian, because if you bring it and you get past this game and you get out of this bracket, I'm going to give you a standing ovation because you would have delivered. I think Rui shows up. I think Norvell will hit some shots. I think Clark is going to be solid. And you know my thoughts on Perkins. I think he's not big game Perk. So I think Tilly is the guy who can have the game to get them past Florida State. Do I think it's going to happen? No. But that's the key one for this game.
I can't believe we both brought up Zags. Okay, continue.
Yes.
I want to hear your next one.
Because I think it is. If you tell me Killian Tilly's line right now, Gus, I can tell you whether they win or not. I really believe that. I say, you go in the future. What do you think? I think it's Tilly. I think Tilly can give me the middle finger. He can say, you've been wrong. Don't call me soft. I am as good as Gus and the Gonzaga faithful say. Shut me up. Gonzaga shut me up that year when I said they weren't making the Final Four. Shut me up again, big guy. I'm ready to go. You're going to need a lot better than 1-6 against Baylor. Okay? Next up. This is another guy you've been champion. Nassir Little.
Got it.
Nassir Little has been on fire. Washington, 20 points. Iona, 19 points. And he was hot at the end of the ACC regular season. He can shoot it from 3. He's shooting a very high percentage from the field. Old Roy puts him in for 20 minutes and says, go nuts. He's like Vinnie Johnson, the microwave. He's shooting without a conscience, and I love every minute of it. He's going to make the most of his time in there. He's the X factor. Kobe White at this point is automatic. He's going to score. He's going to create stuff. He's going to break your ankles. He's going to shoot threes. Fantastic. Cameron Johnson seems like he makes every shot that he takes. Great. Luke May, best third man in college basketball. Did like him as a one man, love him as a 3-man. Old Roy's got 3 titles on the sideline. Nassir Little is the X factor. I think he can come in and he can take care of Okeke and he can make a lot of moves on McLemore, yet he can shoot from 3. He can defend, and he's going to be the difference in them getting by Auburn. And the last guy for me is P.J. Washington. Enough with your videos walking in sneakers. I don't care what that means. I don't want Calipari tweeting, with that retweeted. You know what I want to see, PJ? I want to see the guy that I know is a top 10, potentially higher draft pick, not the guy that on Yahoo today they said is going to go 15th to Miami because while he is doing a nice job, they're comparing him to Bam Adebayo. No, PJ Washington is better than Bam Adebayo. He can shoot outside. He can break you down at a 6'8" frame, and he goes inside, and he's the only player I've seen this year, Gus, that against Tennessee, he caught the ball when they were home, I think it was. Yes, home, yep. Caught the ball, jump hook, couldn't stop it. Came back down again. Life is simple, goes back in the key, jump hook, they can't stop it. Comes down again, does it again. Doesn't look at the crowd, doesn't grab his shirt, doesn't hold it up, say Kentucky, doesn't shoot threes. He says, okay, I got 2 baskets in a row. I'm going to keep doing that. I like the intelligent level. I like him as an athlete. I hated him last year, but I'm Mike Randall, keeping it 100. PJ Washington, if you're going to get by Houston, who likes to do a little bit of this on defense with Kelvin Sampson, you better show up here. And if you do, we're going to get UNC Kentucky. Those are my 3 guys.
Listen, if we get UNC Kentucky again, we are hashtag spoiled. That's what that is right there. So listen, I'm just going to give you a couple thoughts on Tilly. Number 1, totally agree with you. If Tilly can come in and bang a couple threes, get a couple rebounds, like just alter a couple shots.
Throws the whole game off. Throws the whole game off.
Yep. So all that, again, doesn't need to come in and drop 25. No, just come in and do that.
No, give me 12 points, 8 rebounds, 2 blocks. The Seminoles are in trouble.
Totally agree. But Nassir Little is playing, he's playing with a different deck of cards right now than he was earlier on the season.
Very good.
He has confidence.
There's the podcast title. Nassir Little, different deck of cards. Go ahead.
Okay.
You just got it. Very good.
Very good. Very nicely played. But he's playing with different level of confidence. He's playing with a certainty of his role. And he's playing with a comfort level that he wasn't playing with earlier on either. He might have had a little bitterness. He might have been a little jaded that I'm not in the starting lineup. Guess what? He's invested in this team trying to win a title.
Oh, you mean he's not Javon Quinterly of Villanova? Right. Got it. Right. Yes. Got it. He actually cares. Yes.
Yeah. That too. Yeah, maybe that too. And then PJ Washington. Yeah, if he's on the floor, then maybe I go back to my original pick of Kentucky. He's a game changer.
Bam out of bio. Oh, come on.
That's a terrible comp, by the way. Whose comp is that?
I gotta look. It was on Yahoo today. So
terrible comp.
He's got to iron out his inconsistencies. Really, really,
totally different players. Okay, what are they even doing?
That's whatever.
That's awful. Like that doesn't exist. I don't approve of that at all. That's a terrible comp. Look, we saw how tough it was with Wofford. If he plays, maybe that game goes a different way. So if he can get on the court, he solves a lot of problems for them. All right, Mike. How about we go 2 coaches? I think the 2 coaches that I'm going to go with, and maybe we'll talk about the same one, I'm not really sure. But the first one I'm just going to start with is Tony Bennett. And we've been championing him and the Virginia program the entire season and saying this is going to be the Tony Bennett redemption tour. They've made the Sweet 16. A little bit of that sting from last year has gone away. They played really well. And they have I don't know. I don't want to say layup, but they do have, according to seed and according to record and according to team profile, they have one of the easier games that we're going to see on Thursday and Friday to advance into the Elite Eight, and then they deal with whoever, comes out of that Purdue-Tennessee matchup. So I think that if Tony Bennett can, safely get his way through and find the finish line for this matchup against the Ducks, then I think that he's going to be playing with a little bit of house money, being like, okay, yeah, we'll deal with Carson Edwards and we'll try to figure that out. Or we'll deal with Grant Williams, the player of the year in the SEC, from, the year previous and, an All-American type candidate player. We'll figure that out too. But let's get through this first one. So I think the first coach that has something on the line, is going to figure something out here, I think it's Tony Bennett and his staff. And I think the other coach that is interesting, I think is Bruce Pearl. And here's why I think Bruce Pearl is interesting. He's has a script of how his team wants to play. That script is very similar to the script of how the Villanova team played last year. Jacking a bunch of threes, employing confidence in his players to do that, and also letting them play with the freedom that they can do that. And if you're going to do that and then hit them against UNC, you'll get opportunities. UNC is not going to be afraid to run up and down with you at all. They'll go ahead and say, okay, let's play this game. So I think that if you're going to beat UNC here and they're going to be number 1, like you said in your power rankings, the way to do it might be the way that Auburn is going to play against them in this Sweet 16 matchup. Let's cross our fingers and hope we go 48% from 3, get a couple things inside from Wiley. You mentioned Akiki and Macklemore inside. And maybe they don't kill us on the offensive boards. I think that's where you cross your fingers. So I think those are my 2 coaches that I'm intrigued by. Number 1, Tony Bennett redemption tour, and then also Bruce Pearl and his blueprint on how he might try to take down the team that you think might be number 1 in the power rankings in the Sweet 16.
From Colin Wilson, one of the great guys over at Action Network, and there are many.
Love Colin, by the way.
Rick Barnes' record against the spread in NCAA tournament games. Wait for it, folks. 1-9-1. Okay. So you know what, Rick? Last year, you had kind of a layup. You should have beaten Loyola Chicago. Could have made a Final Four. You made it with Texas. We understand that. But you're in Tennessee. You got the 2-time SEC Player of the Year in Grant Williams. You only managed 22 against a pitiful, and I mean pitiful, Iowa defensive team. And here you are going up against good old Matt Painter, who, by the way, since 2005, according to John Ewing at Action Network, is 0-4 against the spread. So we have 2 of the least accomplished coaches against the spread going against each other in Purdue and Tennessee. Someone's going to get a big win. I think this is a huge game for Barnes. I think this is a beatable Purdue team. I think Painter is looking with house money after the teams he's had in the past. And now no one expected this team. So he's got a point guard in Carson Edwards that's probably driving him to have a couple extra beverages at night because they've been arguing back and forth. But the kid can freaking play. He's done a great job getting Matt Harms back to center. You have Ryan Klein, who's good because his mom says he's good. This is a team that Tennessee should beat. And you know what, Barnes? You got to step up here. I'm going the other way. I'm going with Purdue. So I'm going to take them and move on. I also think another coach here that has sort of an interesting situation is Coach K. Listen, I just told you Coach K is probably the greatest coach of all time. So I don't think good old Mike is sitting there losing any sleep that Mike Randall here is going after him a little bit. But Coach K last year had a tough season with all those 5-star recruits. They didn't make the Final Four. I know Grayson Allen's little jumper rolled out. I understand that. But all we've heard this year is the number 1, 2, and 3 top recruits. And these could be 3 guys drafted in the top 5, although I have no idea why Cam Reddish would be there. But fine. You have Zion Williamson, who's the player of the year, and now you have a bracket where you're going against Virginia Tech, who you know you can beat, who you're familiar with, LSU, who doesn't have their head coach, and Michigan State. Izzo's got his kids on fumes right now. You do have, if you look at it objectively, a fairly easy path to the Final Four. And oh, by the way, Coach K's 3-5 against the spread since 2005, okay, in the Sweet 16. So Painter's 0-4 in the Sweet 16. Coach K is 3-5. And good old Rick Barnes in the tournament is 1-9-1. So I'm sort of putting coaches on guard here. I'm not going after Cal, who's 9-2 in the Sweet 16 against the spread. I'm not going against Old Roy, who's 6-2. Beeline scary for my Texas Tech pick, 3-0-2. I'm going against those guys. Tennessee should get through this game, and Duke should get through this game. Although I am on the other side with Purdue and Carson Edwards and Gus. If we went back a year, who would think that I'm backing Matt Painter, right? Okay. But here we are, and I'm doing it. And I think good old Rick's going to 1-10-1.
It's like I don't even know who I'm talking to when you're going to bring up Purdue and like how well they're doing. This is fabulous. I love this part of the podcast. This is great. I love that you bring it full circle. Well done, young man. And let's just go with one team. So we went, 4, our new Final Fours, adjusted to the Sweet 16. We went 3 players. We broke down 3 players for you guys. 2 coaches that we're going to pay attention to. And then how about just one team, Mike? A team that you think might cover. A team that you're interested in. A team that you think might surprise. A team that you're just wondering about. I'll lead here, and I think this reflects back upon the conversation that we had with our friends over at 3-Man Weave with with Jim Root, and he was the champion of Houston. And we talked about, where is Houston? Are they a Final Four team? Are they a Sweet 16 team? They are now. Are they a national championship contender? And I think this game against Kentucky with the opportunity really will help solve that problem. I don't really have a feel here. This is totally PJ Washington dependent for me, personally. But if you're going to take a look and hit the rewind button and take a look at that Wofford game and see how well they played without their best player having their best game, if you can get a great Corey Davis game, if you can get a great Giroux game, if you can get a great game from one of those guys against this Kentucky team, then maybe that slow-paced game that Kentucky is okay playing with, and of course Houston's going to be okay playing with, maybe that script flips here a little bit, especially if PJ isn't going to find the floor for major minutes or be really efficient. So I think the team that maybe is swept under the carpet a little bit and maybe not getting the love that they should is that Houston team that we talked over with 3-Man Weave earlier this season. Mike, what's the one team that you're kind of intrigued by, whether it be the cover, to upset, or maybe to do something special and surprise some people?
Before I get to there, I'm curious on your take now. So we argued about whether you think Houston can win a national title. How about this? If they beat Kentucky with PJ Washington and then somehow beat North Carolina, you think they can win a title?
Of course.
It's just the road is so tough for them. That's the issue now. Now their road is so very tough, and that's what's going to be the problem. The team, I'm with you on Houston. I'm in. I think they can do it. I think they're going to have to.
So let's put ourselves on the spot here, okay? PJ Washington inclusion aside, are we feeling like this team can win this particular game and then go into a matchup with who we think is going to be UNC and actually find a way to solve the UNC puzzle? That's
no, I don't. I don't.
Right,
but I'll say this: they beat UNC. I am not saying on the podcast next week, no way they can win the title, because I'll be so impressed.
Of course,
that's the hurdle. They got
right.
Put it this way: put them in the draw with Duke, Virginia Tech, Michigan State, and LSU. I think I'd put them through. That's how well I think they're playing right now, and that's crazy.
Yeah,
but
I agree.
And it's interesting. They have a hard path. I also think Gonzaga has a really hard path, by the way. But I think those are the two hardest paths. The team I'm going to focus on really quick, you talked about them earlier, is UVA. UVA, you have the games where you step up and you just blow people out, and I expect it to be this game. I'm probably on the Action Network app. I'm going to pick Virginia first half. I'm going to pick the Virginia given the 8.5 points. I think you got to step on somebody's throat here. It is impossible. If Virginia it has to crush this game. If they barely win it, there's going to be doubt because they barely won against Gardner-Webb in the first half, and then they came in the second half against Oklahoma. Like, they need to step on somebody's throat and kick their fanny. And Oregon is just happy to be here. Peyton Pritchard's talking trash. Wooten has his elbow over the rim. That's fantastic. DeAndre Hunter is there. The Tony Bennett Redemption Tour. If I told you back in October, you have to beat Oregon and then either Matt Painter or Rick Barnes to make a Final Four, that's as good as you're going to get, Tony, because you ain't going to play UC Irvine and St. Mary's. Okay. You're going to have to play somebody good, and you're not playing UNC, and you're not playing Kentucky, and you're not playing Gonzaga, and you're not playing Duke. So you know what? I want to see them step on the throats of Oregon. I expect them to do it. Tomorrow, the staff favorite bets are coming out for Action Network. I picked them. I expect this to be a 15-point win for Virginia. Down screen, back screen, Elite Eight. Get your popcorn ready.
I like the sound of that. That sounds perfect to me. All right, Mike, let's give the listeners a little preview of what we think the games go. We'll just go game by game. We'll start on Thursday. Quick feel where you think it might go, what you think might happen, who might impact the game the most. We'll start right away with the Zags that you just mentioned. Florida State Gonzaga is going to tip at 7:09 p.m. on Thursday. Mike, what's your feel? Which way? Where are we going?
It's a wonderful game, and it's one I can't wait to watch. I just don't understand the logic in giving 7.5. I think 7.5 is way too much. Florida State is athletic. They're long. They beat them last year. I understand if people just like Gonzaga and they're going to root for them. I don't understand, like, people can't be confident from what they've seen to Josh Perkins that he's going to have a fantastic game. Zach Norvell hasn't hit anything recently. I think he's going to hit shots, okay? Right. But I don't think so. Killian Tilly could absolutely swing the game, but we have no proof of that. We've seen Florida State play well. I don't see how this is a blowout. I don't see how that's a range of outcomes. Gonzaga wins by 2 or 3? Sure. Florida State wins by 2 or 3? Sure. Gonzaga wins by 10. They just beat Oregon by 13. I can't see a partner, so I'll take the 7.5 of Florida State.
Listen, I'm kind of with you on that as far as like the margin of victory over Baylor. That makes sense. And I think the other part to pay attention to here is that number like trying to get your attention? It feels like all the money will be on Florida State. So maybe they're
a great point, partner. 62% of the bets and 73% of the money is on Florida State. And the number has increased. That's the only thing. Sometimes they're wrong, but I get it. There is evidence here to be frisky. There certainly is. Yes.
That's why I was going with that. Cause I felt like if you're like, average Joe better or like educated like Einstein better, you're probably going to put some money on Florida State here. So maybe that makes you think twice about it. That's all I'm going to go with that. How about Purdue and Tennessee? That's going to be 7:29 tip on Thursday. We talked about this a tiny bit. So you're still feeling like Painter's going to get this done?
Yeah, I think the best player on the floor in this game could be Carson Edwards. I know Grant Williams is great. I understand that. Admiral Schofield took himself out of the game. Enough of that. Whether he's covering for the coach or not, I really don't care. Purdue's playing well. Everyone's in a role. I'm going to take the point. Yes, I think Purdue can win this game. Tennessee has shown me nothing. They played poorly against Colgate. They played poorly in the second round against Iowa. They almost lost that game. So why is it going to come together now? I like Purdue in this game. 63% of the bets and 76% of the money is on Tennessee. Line has gone normal. It's increased then. So because people are picking Tennessee, they added more points to make Purdue more attractive. So there's no fishiness here. But yeah, I'll take Purdue with 1.5 now.
I'm kind of with you on that. I would lean Purdue here as well. And then let's get to the late games on Thursday. Texas Tech versus Michigan, 9:39 p.m. Listen, you had that number 4 in your power rankings. You're going to go away from this now, or you still go with Texas Tech?
No, I'm going to stay with my Nevada Marquette gut instinct. Something is awry with Michigan. I don't see Michigan as an Elite Eight team this year. They have struggled against teams that have played them tough defensively, i.e. Michigan State. They have struggled to get over the hump there. They're going to struggle here. The line was 1.5, Michigan by 1.5. It's now 2, which makes sense. We have 51% of the bets are on Texas Tech, so it's about 50-50 here. So I'm going to take the Red Raiders and the 2 points.
I'm going to go the other way. I feel like Michigan might be able to figure this out. I'm going to trust, we're talking like 2 of the best coaching staffs in the nation here on either side of the sideline. I'm going to go the other way, and I think that Michigan finds a way to figure it out, and I think that Michigan maybe hits a couple of more threes than Texas Tech does, and that might be the difference. And I mentioned in the player rundown, I think Xavier Simpson might be like one of the players to pay attention to here. If he's going to have one of those like 10 points, 9 assists, 8 rebound games with a couple steals, that might be the difference there. So I'm going to go the other way. And then let's end Thursday with Oregon and Virginia. I think we're both on the Virginia bandwagon here. Is there anything else that you need to get off your chest as far as this game goes?
Yeah, well, this is the opposite here of the Gonzaga-Florida State game. The line opened at 7.5. It's gone up to 8.5. 62% of the bets, 70% of the money is on Oregon. Okay. So they're making you more attractive to take Oregon. Sorry. I like Virginia. I think you get a big game for them at some point and they blow somebody out. May not be the next round. Certainly won't be the Final Four. That's for sure. But, I think Oregon's had a nice run. A month ago, Gus, they lost 3 games in a row to Oregon State, USC, and UCLA. Okay, so they've had a very nice run, but I think they regress to the mean. They struggle on offense. They do. Peyton Pritchard ain't dropping 20 on this team. Who's scoring for them? I mean, okay, fine. I'll take my chances. Wooten only averages 6 points per game. He probably has 6 blocks per game. I'll take Virginia.
I'm with you there. 100%. Let's get to Friday. LSU and Michigan State. Look, it's the best point guard matchup that we could hope for. We got Waters. We have Winston. Then we have Naz Reid against the bigs of Michigan State inside. Where are you leaning with LSU, Michigan State? Do we feel like Michigan State and Sparty is out of gas? Do we feel like LSU and their coaching staff is somehow like deeply invested and everybody has bought in inside the program and there's a little bit of a good vibe going on there, even with like the outside static looking kind of negative? Where are you at with Michigan State and LSU?
Michigan State is going to pound LSU on the boards. LSU, as much as they're a big team, are 266 in defensive rebounding percentage. Michigan State is 24th. LSU hits the offensive boards, but Michigan State also keeps them off the backboards. Cassius Winston is tremendous. LSU in their wins, very interesting. They have not faced a team really in this long winning streak and the great games they had that had a high scoring, high level point guard. If you think back, the teams that they played in conference, Ashton Hagans was not that. Jordan Bone's okay. He's solid. Cassius Winston is better. So I think that's the difference. And of course, Izzo used the big greater than sign Tony Bedford. Nice job by Tony, but he's not Will Wade. I'm going to take them. It's a lot of points here, man. I understand that. It's now 6. It went from 6.5 to 6. 64% of the money is coming in on LSU, so they're adjusting it properly. But I will give the points with Michigan State.
I'm with you there. Here's why. I think that the luck, and you talked about this a little bit on the Action Network podcast, like the vibe and the luck that LSU has ridden this entire season with all these close games, maybe it just ends here, and this is where, they make the Sweet 16, they can celebrate that. And this is where they run into the roadblock. So I'm with you on Michigan State.
And in SEC conference, Gus, it depends on what you think. They were 5-1 in overtime games in the SEC. Right. Does that mean they know how to win close games, or the luck's going to regress? Depends on what you think.
Yeah, I think that's the question. So I think, listeners out there, depending on which way you're going to go with LSU, I think that's the question that you need to answer there. Are they going to, does it come back to bite them? Does karma correct itself there? Or is this just a habit and a characteristic of their team? I think that's a legit question to ask there. Auburn, North Carolina. I'm rolling with the heels here. If you're going to get a shootout with anybody, why do you want to get a shootout with Roy Williams? I don't know why that would be I don't think that's something that you would want to subscribe to success in college basketball. So I'm riding with the heels here. Where are you at?
Run, baby, run. Interesting point, too. I'm going to give the points, but again, John Ewing, Action Network, does a great job. In the NCAA tournament games with a high point total of like 140 or more points, the under has gone 57% when it starts to decrease. So everybody loved Auburn, loved North Carolina. Pearl came on to take the over. I don't know about that one anymore. I think it's almost too easy. They're begging you. But I'm going to give the points for North Carolina.
Fair. And then how about Virginia Tech and Duke? We talked about the outlaw news at the start of the podcast. Of course, that's unfortunate for the Hokies. And you never know how strife is going to hit a locker room, and then how the players, the roster, the coaching staff, and the program are going to deal with that strife. Some people are great problem solvers. Some people just stall in the problem solving moment. So you just don't know what kind of tools that Virginia Tech has in the toolbox to deal with this, and how they're going to navigate it. So I think if you're going to lean one way or the other, I think it has to be Duke, especially with the news from Outlaws of late. Mike, any different thoughts on that?
Yeah, 77% of the money's on Virginia Tech now. I think the Outlaw injury, people have to sort of catch up to that. It's 7.5. I would have taken the points, but they're so thin, 7 scholarship players. Justin Robinson's going to have to play at an extremely high level. I like Duke here. I will actually now give the points with the Outlaw news.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And then how about we end up with Houston, Kentucky, the game we just kind of talked about a little bit. That's going to be at 9:57 p.m. on Friday. Great game to end with. You know, we talked about what is Houston. Are they a national championship contender? Are they a Final Four team? Or is this where the ride ends? And I think this game answers a lot of questions. We talked about how it's PJ Washington dependent. We talked about how the coaching matchup might be really underrated here with Coach Cal and Coach Sampson. So, Mike, I'm going to give slight lean to Kentucky here, but I really think I'm waiting on the PJ Washington news. Where are you at with this?
I don't know how well PJ Washington is going to play. I don't know who's going to win this game. Give me the 3 points. It's really that simple. If they were all healthy, it's fine. Washington's walking around smiling, getting on the plane today. That's fantastic, big guy. You ready for 20 and 12? I mean, that's a little different just because you're healthy. You haven't played for 2 games, okay? And you could make an argument. They need him against Wofford. I mean, they absolutely need him. So he must have been really banged up to not playing that game. Whether he's going to be on the floor or effective is a different thing. Houston's tenacious. They're going to rebound. They're going to come after you. 3 points, close enough. I'll take the points.
I'm kind of with you there. They're going to gang rebound like they always do. Those guards do an unbelievable job coming down and helping out on the rebounding end. Sampson seems to have always done that. All right, listeners, there's your rundown. We gave you a 4, 3, 2, 1 countdown. We gave you a rundown of the games. I think we got you all caught up in everything you need to get ready for Thursday and Friday. So if you really like what you're listening to, please, on your podcast consumption vehicle of choice, don't be afraid to give the podcast a nice, a nice review, say some kind things, say some nice kind things about our guests like Miriam Fader, who we had on earlier this week. She was fantastic. Gave some valuable insight on Ja and Tyler Hero. Or just say nice things about Mike and I. It wouldn't, kindness is cool. We're good with that. And then please don't forget to give the podcast a follow at SDS Podcast on Twitter, efficiency keystrokes, of course. Don't forget to give Mike a follow at Randall Rant. He's entertaining, insightful, and a riot, all in one nice, tidy little package. Mike, anything else for the listeners out there?
No, just can't wait for these games. I think they're going to be legendary.
It's going to be a great Thursday, Friday slate, and listeners will catch up with you before you know it. Don't worry. We're happy to share this part of March with you. Thanks for letting us keep you company in your earbuds and your speakers. Cheers. Cilantro. Grazie. Arigato.